It's tough to think that merely 2 decades ago, Australian football was leaving a solid imprint on the European game. Tim Cahill, Harry Kewell, Mark Viduka and Mark Schwarzer had been starring for their clubs in the Premier League alongside many others of Australia's golden generation. Each player routinely started and played for their clubs, as slowly but surely Australia was cementing itself as a footballing nation. It seemed from here on that this was golden generation would springboard us to future successes. Unfortunately, ever since the golden generation, we have sorely lacked. Barely to have any of our top players regularly playing in the top leagues in Europe. Matt Ryan was recently dropped as the #1 keeper by Brighton, while his former teammate Aaron Mui has recently moved on to China. Suddenly, Australia's presence in Europe has greatly diminished. Indeed, this does coincide with a decrease in quality of the Socceroos, whom just haven't been able to replicate the euphoric heights of their 2006 World Cup appearance. Prior to the mountaintop that the golden generation led us to, Australia was a dominant team in Oceania when we were still part of its federation. Participating in the weaker federation allowed us the opportunity to flex our muscles, dominating opponents each time of asking. This accumulated to our famous 31-0 win over the American Samoa in 2001. This of course came with trophies, where we managed to win the OFC Cup 4 times in 1980, 1996, 2000 and 2004. Those last 3 were spearheaded by the talented golden generation Australia was moulding. Success in this competition allowed us invitations to the FIFA Confederations Cup. This culminated in the 1997 FIFA Confederations Cup, where we made the final and sadly lost to Brazil 6-0. Though the humbling against football's greatest nation was unfortunate, the opportunities such as appearances provided us to fly our wings on the world stage, showing the world what we had on offer. However, a World Cup still eluded us, as we narrowly lost out in the 1998 qualification to Iran. However, it was a sign that we were coming. Our dominance in Oceania wouldn't last forever, as we formally switched federations to become part of the Asian Federation, hoping to further stamp our presence on the world game. This would lead us to push for the 2006 World Cup in Germany. This opportunity served as a blessing, as we famously paired up against Uruguay to qualify for the 2006 World Cup. The end result was a dramatic penalty shootout to decide who goes to the World Cup.
It's a huge save.
Wonderful save.
It's as big as we've ever seen in Australia. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to do my maths.
4-2.
I can hardly.
4-2.
I can
He
hardly
wins it
stand
for us. John.
Here's Aloisi for a place in the World
win
Cup.
It for us.
He scored! Australia have done it!
John! Come on!
John Aloisi, the Confederations Cup hero, has done it
boys!
in the biggest game of all.
Come on, Australia! Johnny Warren!
At last, at long last. 31 years, 4 months and 24 days have passed since Australia ended its campaign at the 74 World Cup.
After making it to the World Cup, we were in a state of euphoria, as it was our first outing in 32 years. A comeback win against Japan were followed by a tough loss to Brazil and a clutch draw against Croatia, leading us to the round of 16 for the first time ever. Tragically, a narrow defeat to Italy sent us packing, but the Socceroos left us proud of them and their efforts in Germany. All of this set us up for Asian success, having been cemented as the best Asian side, alongside South Korea and Japan. An Asian Cup victory in 2015 was a pinnacle of our time in AFC. Cracks really showed in the build-up to 2018. Up against Syria, the Socceroos were barely able to beat the worn-torn nation. Coach Ange Postecoglou resigned shortly after qualifying, confirming that there were deep issues within the FFA. Dutchman Bert van Marwijk took over, hoping to muster up a fight in Russia. In a group featuring eventual champions France, as well as Denmark and Peru, we were given half a chance to make it out. Unfortunately, the side emphasised pragmatism over creativity, as our goals stemmed from VAR handling penalties. Losses to France and Peru as well as a draw to Denmark, sent us packing once again. Where things once looked up, they began to look dour. Australian football was at the crossroads. We lacked the talent to make any serious impressions, but we were still good enough to qualify for tournaments. Mediocrity was on our hands. The A-League fared a little better, as a lack of growth and interest stifled what was once a promising league that could have competed with the USA MLS. There are quite a number of issues that led to Australia's prospects diminishing. A key factor has been the extortionate fees that are paid at the youth level. Similarly to the USA, Australia seems to view football as not a sport for the world class, given the high fees that parents have to pay for their kids. Given that it is the most participated sport among boys, with 21.9% of boys under the age of 14 taking up the sport in 2017, it's staggering the level of fees that are paid. These fees can be in the thousands. When discussing the issue on Optus Sport, former Socceroos stars from Australia's golden generation, Mark Schwarzer, Mark Viduka, John Alisi, Joseph Skocko, Vinnie Grella and Craig Moore all lamented the high fees paid in Australia, labelling them ridiculous and an elitist sport in Australia. Figures as high as $2,650 per annum were being touted, and obviously high fee for young children wanting to take up the sport. In comparison to Europe, Viduka and Grella, whose kids are raised in Croatia and Italy, respectively, want up the fees that they pay for their kids. Viduka pays the equivalent of $80 per month for a package including tournaments and a heap of matches, whilst Grella pays only the equivalent of $205 per year for a superior system in developing talent. It's clear that this can hamper the growth of the game in Australia. Our next generation aren't always afforded a fair go to play football, given the high fees. The fees can cost as much as 4 times more than rugby league and Aussie rules, despite soccer still having a higher rate of participation. If the fees are lowered, even more will participate in the game, increasing incentive for parents and children to pursue football and stick with it after the initial first years, and perhaps grooming our next golden generation. The stringent salary cap in the A-League on international marquees does it no favours in enabling it the pulling power to draw in overseas stars. In the MLS, they feature the designated player rule, or the David Beckham rule, which allows teams to break the salary cap in order to sign international stars typically. Beckham was the first to set this trend, paving the way for Thierry Henry, Andre Pirlo, David Villa, Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba, Wayne Rooney, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It helped facilitate the growth of the game in America, which improves further and further. The USA now features a crop of talents including Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Giovanni Reina, and Sergio Nodest. Australia lacks America's pulling power because of the way we've structured our cap. The A-League allows clubs to sign 2 marquee players outside of the cap, which is great theoretically, but ultimately restricts clubs on who they can and cannot sign. Alessandro Del Piero was huge for Sydney FC in 2012, but since his departure, we haven't replicated that level of an acquisition. David Villa's short contract at Melbourne City was a debacle, where Villa only played in 6 out of the 10 contracted matches for City. Our way around the issue is to remove the limit on how many marquee players can sign out of the cap. The A-League needs a kick, something to get fans excited. A star player arriving could be just that. If Melbourne Victory, for example, were to sign a European star, it would bring a level of attraction and attention to the A-League, similarly to what David Beckham brought to the MLS. This would increase the revenue in Australia, and therefore the quality, improving the league, and subsequently the Socceroos. The league has also looked at expansion into different territories, introducing Western United and the Macarthur Bulls into the competition. While the endeavour to introduce new teams is appreciated, the challenge comes into the 2 teams being expanded into taken territory by the league. Western United is based in Western Melbourne and Geelong, markets that are already firmly entrenched by Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City. Macarthur were implemented in southern Western Sydney, where Sydney FC and the Western Sydney Wanderers, the latter in particular, reign supreme. introducing teams in already saturated areas is a risky proposition. The league could have been better off introducing them in untapped areas such as Tassie or the ACT, or better yet, introduce a promotion/relegation system with the NPL to spice up the competition and bring in teams that have established and dedicated fan bases. It certainly isn't an easy fix, but these ideas will improve the Socceroos and the A-League. By cheapening the game for youths whilst improving the pulling power of the league, it will allow the game to grow from its current stagnation. It certainly isn't an easy fix, but these ideas will improve the Socceroos and the A-League. By cheapening the game for youths while improving the pulling power of the league, it will allow the game to grow from its current stagnation. Thanks for watching today's video. This first appeared as an article on sportinghq.com.au, and the link will be in the description. Remember to like and subscribe, and to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, sportinghq.com.au.
Sporting HQ.